You're not here by accident. Something deeper brought you to this threshold. Call it fate. Call it memory. Call it the echo of your own forgotten soul calling you back home. This isn't another spiritual hack. Not a motivational trick to patch a broken life. What you're about to hear has weight. It carries blood from older worlds, the kind of knowledge kept quiet by men who saw too much and spoke too little. It used to be hidden, guarded by silence wrapped in riddles passed down only in whispers. But now somehow it found you. Coincidence or a mirror finally turning toward the part of you that never stopped watching? There is something ancient inside you, a vision not tied to your eyes, an awareness not taught by schools. You've felt it, haven't you? The room goes still. A stranger looks at you from across the crowd. You turn before your name is even spoken. A dream unfolds, and weeks later it becomes your life. A flicker, a knowing, no reason, no logic, just truth. These aren't accidents. They're ruptures in the veil, windows into the part of you that sees what the rest of you has forgotten, and that part is waking up now. Not because you're ready, but because you were always meant to. The door is open, not the kind you knock on, the kind that opens when the silence inside you grows louder than the noise outside. Step through, and nothing will look the same again. Because there are two worlds. One you touch with your hands, the other you sense in your bones. Most people live only in the first. The material, the obvious, the explainable. But beneath that surface, another world breathes subtle, invisible, relentless. You walk between them every day, without knowing it. But now, you're starting to notice the gap. That eerie stillness behind your thoughts. That pull towards something just out of reach. Throughout time, some remembered how to see both. Not prophets, not chosen ones. Just people who became quiet enough long enough to remember what we've all forgotten. This isn't magic, it's memory, not fantasy, but the faculty of vision beyond the senses coded in your DNA. Something in you is stirring, a song that sounds familiar but you can't recall the words. That's not imagination, it's a signal. The first thread pulling you back to the center. Now we begin. There is a way of seeing that doesn't depend on your eyes. Not through shape or color, but through presence, through something ancient and soft like the hush before a storm. Call it inner sight, a second vision not located in your head but in your silence. It doesn't need proof, it doesn't argue, it simply knows. You've used it before. Every time you dreamed and touched places that don't exist in this world and yet felt more real than anything here. You went there without trying, without moving, without a map. So ask yourself, how did your mind build an entire world while your body lay still in the dark? How did it create sensation, sound, memory, meaning from nothing? Because nothing isn't empty, it's the starting point of all things. Children know this. Watch a baby stare into space, smiling at shadows we can't see. They aren't confused, they remember. Before the world taught them what's real and what's not, they saw with clarity. As we age, we unlearn this gift. We trade knowing for knowledge, we trade vision for validation. But it doesn't die, it waits. Sometimes it whispers in déjà vu. Other times in the sudden chill when someone enters the room. Sometimes it's the thought of a friend just before your phone lights up. You've felt these things, don't deny them. Your mind may call it coincidence, but your soul recognizes the pattern. These are sparks, flickers of a vision buried under years of forgetting. And now it's time to remember. But remember this. You can't force your way in. You have to become quiet enough to notice what's already there. Inner vision is not about more effort. It's about less interference, less noise, less control. To awaken this perception, you must build the foundation, not with crystals, not with chance, but with stillness, breath, and focus. 3 sacred elements, 3 ancient pillars. The first, conscious silence. Not just the absence of noise, but the presence of stillness, a silence that listens. Most people run from it. They fill every moment with sound, with screens, with tasks, because silence reveals what they're avoiding. But in that silence lives your true self, beyond identity, beyond memory, beyond story. The second sacred breath. Breathing is the bridge between your body and your soul. Not the shallow autopilot breath you take while scrolling, but the kind that pulls you into the now, into your rib cage, into your blood, into the rhythm that connects all things. Breathe with intention and you open doorways. The third directed focus. Your attention is currency. What you give it to grows. When scattered, it's weak. When focused, it becomes a blade. Silence, breath, focus. Together they awaken the part of you that sees without eyes. Not all at once, but slowly, like dawn breaking across an old battlefield. Before you begin the practice, you must prepare your ground. Not with tools, but with intention. You don't need incense. You don't need chance robes or moonlight. Those things are rituals of the outer world. The real altar is your mind. And right now, your mind is overgrown. A wild garden of thoughts crisscrossed with old habits and unspoken fears. You don't need to clear it all, just a small patch, enough to kneel, enough to plant a seed. Pick a time, 10 minutes maybe, not for performance, not for show, but for presence. Whether it's at dawn or behind a locked bathroom door doesn't matter. What matters is that you show up. Daily, without apology, without waiting for perfect conditions. Because perfect never comes. The world will always be loud. The room too cold, the phone too close, the ache in your chest too sharp. But the commitment you make to stillness must become louder than your excuses. Even the noise can become your ally. Let the hum of traffic sharpen your focus. Let distractions become obstacles you bow through. Eventually, your mind will recognize this moment as sacred. It will stop fighting. It will start listening. And now the practice begins. They call it the SCP ritual. 3 letters, 1 breath work, but it holds the architecture of an inner temple. This isn't just a relaxation technique. This is descent. Each breath a spiral, each exhale a step inward. 7 breaths. The first, a window opens. You draw in golden light, not imaginary, but symbolic. Clarity, energy, life. You exhale tension, as if blowing dust off the old floorboards of your inner temple. The second and third, your thoughts slow. Time softens. The world outside starts to blur. Your eyelids stay heavy, but your awareness grows sharper. By the fourth, something changes. You feel a warmth behind your forehead, a pulse, a memory of something ancient returning. You don't chase it, you watch. By the 6th breath, you're standing at the edge of 2 worlds, 1 foot in the seen, 1 in the unseen. In the 7th breath, you enter. A quiet so vast you can hear your soul. A stillness so complete you remember who you were before the world named you. And then you stay. Not to escape, but to remember. This is not a shortcut, this is a door. And you've just stepped through. There is a place within you where thought dissolves, where identity loosens, where time forgets to keep count. It lives in the moments just before sleep when the world dims and your mind hovers between breath and oblivion. The ancients called it the blind spot of consciousness. You passed through it 1,000 times, but you never stayed, never looked around. It's like a tunnel you've driven through with the lights off. You feel the shift, but when you emerge, you can't explain where you've been. Now you begin to notice. This gap, this silent threshold is not empty, it's sacred. In that flickering space, thoughts pause. The machinery of your mind quiets, and something else rises. Not sound, not image, but presence, unfiltered, unnamed. If you learn to linger here, you'll discover more than peace. You'll begin to hear a deeper voice, one that doesn't speak in words, but in knowing. Most rush past this moment. They fall into sleep or snap back into thought. But if you stay, if you wait, you'll witness the veil thinning. You'll remember what it feels like to just be. No striving, no role, no expectation. A clarity will rise as sudden as lightning, as soft as a whisper. Answers you didn't know you needed will surface. Memories you forgot you lost will return. Visions, symbols, impressions. They are not hallucinations. They are echoes of the deeper mind, the subconscious, the universal, the dreamer behind the dream. To reach this place intentionally requires no force, only familiarity. Start small. Tonight, as you fall asleep, stay awake just a few seconds longer. Observe. Don't force your mind to stay alert. Let it relax, but stay present. You may feel like you're floating or falling. Good, let it come. Your brain is shifting gears, from beta, the fast pace of the waking world, into alpha, then deeper still, into theta. These are not just waves in your head, they are rivers of awareness. Alpha is the dream bridge, theta the dream door. And when you pass through, you'll enter the space where time collapses and something timeless emerges. This space is not a goal, it is a homecoming. The less you chase it, the more it reveals itself. In the quiet between thoughts, you will find everything. There's a rhythm beneath your skin, a tide that pulls your mind through different shores, awake, dreaming, still scattered. Each one has a frequency, each one tells a story. This is the dance of your brainwaves. Most live trapped in beta, the sharp, fast current of doing thinking, reacting. It's efficient, but relentless. It keeps you tethered to clocks, screens, decisions. In beta, the world is loud, productivity thrives, but presence, it suffocates. Beta is necessary, but it's not home. When the day softens and you begin to slow, you cross into alpha, the threshold state. Here things change. Your mind stops gripping, your thoughts start flowing. Alpha is not sleep. It's the breath before the dream. It's where the sky clears and something deeper peers through. Artists live here. Writers, mystics, wanderers. They describe it as a zone, a flow, a trance. Not because it's strange, but because it's natural. A return. Then comes theta, the realm of dream symbols and spontaneous truths. It moves slowly. It doesn't follow logic. It paints with memory and emotion. In theta, you don't just think, you feel knowing. Visions arise, not always clear but undeniable. This is where healing happens, where the past comes to be held, not judged. It's also where the subconscious speaks. Not in sentences, but in metaphors. Your inner child lives here. Your oldest wounds do too, not waiting to haunt you, but to be seen. And if you go deeper still, you'll find delta, the slowest wave, the still ocean beneath all thought. Few reach it awake, but when you do, there is no you. Only unity, only source. Delta is not insight, it's dissolution, where separation fades, where ego crumbles, where time dies. This is the root of the tree, the pulse beneath the soil. And the most sacred part, you've touched all these states before. Every night, every time you dream, doze, drift. You already know the path, you've just forgotten the map. But you can return, and breath is your compass. Try this. Sit, back straight, eyes closed. Inhale slowly through your nose 4 seconds. Exhale gently through your mouth 6 to 8 seconds. Add a pause at the top, a pause at the bottom. Let your breath become oceanic, tidal, sacred. After a few minutes, you'll feel it, a soft melting. The edges of your thoughts will blur. The inner noise will dim, and something truer will rise. This is how you begin to surf your own mind, not to control it, but to learn its waters. To feel which wave serves which purpose, when to act, when to rest, when to listen. Because mastery isn't domination, it's alignment. Learn this rhythm and you'll never be lost again. As you descend inward, you'll find the path is not empty. It is guarded. Not by demons, not by monsters, but by the quiet resistance inside you. These are the guardians of the threshold, not enemies, but tests. They come cloaked as thoughts, as moods, as sudden discomfort. The first is doubt. It arrives with a whisper. Is any of this real? Are you just imagining things? It questions everything, your practice, your insight, your worth. But doubt isn't the enemy, it's a blade. It cuts through illusion. If you wield it with awareness, it becomes discernment, a sacred filter, a compass that keeps you from delusion. Invite your doubt to speak. Ask it, what are you protecting me from? What truth am I afraid to trust? Listen, then continue. Next comes fear. But not the fear of danger. This is deeper. It's the fear of unmaking, of unraveling the self you've clung to for years. It says, what if you lose control? What if you disappear? And in a way you will. Because awakening always costs something, and what you lose is never what you truly are, but who you've pretended to be. Sit with the fear, breathe with it, let it speak, then walk through it. Every time you do it becomes smaller, not gone but respected. Then comes impatience. You've touched glimpses, you've felt the stillness, the insight, the power. Now you want more, now you want speed. But the soul does not hurry. Impatience is the ego's demand for climax, a refusal to trust the slow alchemy of transformation. And so you wait. Not passively, but with full attention. Each breath a seed, each day a drop of rain. Eventually, impatience transforms into presence. And then, just when you feel steady, just when you begin to taste clarity, the most dangerous guardian arrives. The spiritual ego. It says you've made it, you are awakened, you are above others. It feels noble, it sounds wise, but beneath it hides separation. Comparison, superiority, isolation. The spiritual ego doesn't want growth, it wants a throne. You must step down from it, again and again. True insight humbles you. It dissolves the need to be seen, to be right, to be above. It roots you in service, in connection, in the quiet, knowing that no one is ahead or behind, only walking different paths to the same center. Each guardian transforms you. Doubt becomes clarity, fear becomes courage, impatience becomes devotion, ego becomes humility. And when you've passed through all of them, something ancient in you will remember how to walk without needing to arrive. One day it happens. Not with trumpets, not with lightning, but with silence. A shift so subtle you almost miss it. You wake, but not from sleep, from illusion. Colors feel deeper, not brighter, but more true. The breeze on your skin holds meaning. The sound of footsteps echoes through more than space. Even your own breath feels different, as if it's always been trying to speak to you. Some call it the click, others the veil lifting. But it has no name, only presence. It's not about what you see, it's about what you stop needing to explain. You notice synchronicities not as miracles, but as reminders. The right phrase at the right time. A stranger's glance that feels like recognition. A sentence in a book that answers a question you hadn't yet asked. These are the signs, not that the world has changed, but that you have. And yet there's no need to shout about it, no fireworks, no announcements. Because awakening doesn't crave attention. It breathes in quiet places. It arrives while washing dishes, while watching the rain, while sitting in line with no phone in your hand. The paradox is this: the more you chase it, the more it disappears. But when you finally stop, when you surrender, it comes like a tide you didn't notice rising until it surrounded you completely. You don't become someone new. You unbecome the illusion. You don't gain insight. You lose the need to know. And that's where peace begins. Not the peace of escape, not the stillness of denial, but the kind of silence that holds pain and beauty in the same breath. You still feel sorrow, you still bleed, but now you do so without drowning. You witness yourself, and in that witnessing freedom takes root. But this is not the end, it's the beginning. Because awakening isn't a finish line, it's a doorway, and behind it are more layers, more unraveling, more truth. You may feel like you've arrived only to find yourself stumbling again into the same patterns, the same shadows. That's not failure, that's integration. The light touched you, but now it must filter through every corner of your being. Every wound, every reflex, every habit. And some of those will resist, but with each return to presence, you strengthen the roots. The insight settles not just in your mind, but in your nervous system. You begin to live it, without needing to remember. And slowly you stop chasing awakening because you've become it. And then you notice, time doesn't move the way it used to. Moments stretch, memories overlap. You walk into a room and already know what's about to happen, not in words, in sensation. It's as if life is no longer unfolding line by line, but all at once. This is what happens when your inner vision awakens. You begin to swim in deeper waters. But here's the danger: depth without grounding can drown you. Some truths come as symbols, others as clarity. You must learn the difference. One speaks in metaphor, the other in silence. But both demand humility. Many seekers lose their way here. They confuse emotional intensity for spiritual depth. They take every flicker of imagination as a cosmic sign. They forget that discernment is the shadow of wisdom. So how do you stay anchored when the world becomes liquid? You build an inner compass, one made of rhythm, discipline, presence. Not rules, not beliefs, but practices. Simple ones. Morning intention. Before the world touches you, touch yourself with awareness. A breath, a word, a reminder. Body scans. Don't drift too far from the flesh. Check in. Where is the tension? Where is the numbness? Your body never lies. Journaling. Write what arises, not for others, for yourself. Anchor your experiences in language so they don't evaporate into fantasy. Nature. Return to the original rhythm, the wind, the soil, the slow wisdom of trees. Nothing artificial survives here. Movement. Let the energy flow. Yoga, walking, stillness in motion. Keep the channel open. These aren't rituals for show. They're ropes tied to the shore while you explore the ocean within. Because visions can be beautiful but also deceptive. Not every image is meant to be shared. Not every message is for the world. Some truths are only meant to change you. Learn to hold them quietly. Let them steep. Let them teach. And when they're ready, they'll tell you what they mean. Also be careful who you bring these truths to. Some will meet you in the silence. Others will laugh. That's okay. It's not their fault. We all wake at our own pace. Your job isn't to convince, it's to embody, to carry what you've seen without turning it into performance. This journey is sacred, but it's also ordinary. It's in the way you listen, the way you pause, the way you hold space without filling it. That's how others will know you've changed. Not by what you say, but by the quiet that follows you. You've walked the path inward. You've tasted stillness, touched the thread that weaves through dreams, breath, and thought. But now comes the truest test. Can you carry the sacred into the mundane? Because awakening that stays on the mountaintop is just a moment, not a life. You must return to dishes, to traffic, to bills, to conversations that skim the surface. And here in this ordinary world, the real work begins. Not in meditation, but in conflict. Not in visions, but in habits. Integration is the art of living what you've seen. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about living more fully as who you already are beneath the noise. At first, you'll slip. Old patterns will whisper. Old fears will rise. You'll catch yourself reacting, retreating, forgetting. Good. That means you're watching. Because growth doesn't move in a straight line, it spirals. You circle back not because you failed, but because you're ready to meet the lesson from a higher place. Support this with reflection. Write, record, not to track progress, but to map your depth, to see how the insights bend the shape of your behavior. You'll begin to notice it. You pause before reacting. You listen before defending. You feel before deciding. Small, but everything shifts in these small moments. And in time, you'll find your nervous system catching up to your soul. You'll move slower, speak with intention, hear what isn't being said. And as your vision deepens, so will your relationships. Some will grow roots, others will fall away. Let them! The people meant to walk with you will recognize your new rhythm. Not always with understanding, but with respect. Those who don't, they were lessons, not lifelines. You don't have to share everything. In fact, the most powerful truths are often the ones you carry silently. Not every insight needs a witness. Not every transformation requires applause. Just live it. Presence doesn't need validation. And as your new way of seeing settles, you'll begin to feel it. Moments slowing down, the sound of your own breath becoming an anchor, a clarity that persists even when life becomes storm. This is integration. When presence becomes muscle memory, when spiritual awareness enters your fingertips, your tone, your posture, your gaze, you'll notice the ordinary glowing, not with magic but with meaning. That's the mark of true transformation. Not more visions, but deeper perception of what was always there. Here is the final paradox. The more awakened you become, the more ordinary life feels, not dull, not empty, but real. You stop searching for magic because you realize you are it. You're not here to float above the world. You're here to walk through it with open eyes and a quiet fire inside your chest. In the beginning, every insight was a revelation, every still moment a miracle. You chased light, waited for signs, hungered for something more. But now you drink your coffee differently. You look at strangers with reverence. You pause when anger rises. You smile not because something is funny, but because you see. Spirituality is no longer a practice. It's how you breathe, how you listen, how you choose not to speak when silence carries more truth. You stop measuring your journey. There are no badges, no finish lines, no final awakenings. Just layers. Unfolding, softening, returning. You'll have bad days, storms, shadows that creep back in and whisper old lies. But now you don't panic. You welcome them like an old teacher who speaks in riddles. You let the pain move through you without turning it into identity. You bleed, but you don't forget the light. This is grace. To fall without forgetting who you are. To rise without needing to be seen. At some point, you'll stop talking about your awakening. Not because it didn't matter, but because it became you. You won't need to explain stillness. You'll embody it. You won't argue about truth. You'll live aligned with it. Others will feel it. They won't always understand, but they'll feel safer near you, less hurried, less afraid. Not because you fixed them, but because you remembered yourself in their presence. And that remembering is contagious. Eventually, you'll stop asking what's next. You'll realize this moment is what's next, always has been. You'll live life not as a seeker, but as a witness. Not as someone chasing light, but as someone who knows how to carry it in the dark. This journey never ends. Each breath a return, each silence a doorway, each ordinary moment a chance to see again for the first time. So keep going, not forward, but inward. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where the unfolding begins. And it begins now.